Looking to get in tune with your midlife body and treat her with more care? Do you want to dream bigger and feel more purposeful and passionate in your life? I invite you to join me at the Midlife Mojo Virtual Summit, June 18th through 22nd, when we will be taking midlife to a whole new level. Whether you're looking to reignite your passion, find your purpose, or achieve new dreams, this virtual summit is designed to provide you with the tools and insights you need to thrive during this really exciting, yet sometimes challenging period of our lives. And guess what? It's completely free. This summit features a lineup of amazing speakers who are going to share their wisdom and expertise on a range of topics related to midlife, yours truly included. We are authors, coaches, podcasters, and experts in health, relationships, career, reinvention, personal growth, and so much more. Plus, you get to interact and connect with a cool midlife tribe of other women that are open and excited to figuring out how to thrive in midlife too. I can't wait for you to join us. Details are in the show notes. Let's get inspired to be our best in midlife together. I think that when we are open to reinventing ourselves and we're open to possibilities and we're open to the idea that it's not necessarily a straight line, that it doesn't have to be done in a certain time frame, that I might zig and zag and detour to get to my final destination, that so much of the learning is in the journey. That final destination is important because we have a dream or a goal and we want to move toward that. So yes, that's very important. But just as important to me is that journey of getting there. Welcome to Reinvention Rebels. Stories of brave and unapologetic women, 50 to 90 years young, who have boldly reimagined life on their own terms to find new purpose and possibilities. I'm your host, Wendy Battles. Ready for a dose of inspiration? Let's get to it. Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of the Reinvention Rebels podcast. I'm your host, Wendy. I am so excited you've joined me today. This is the place to come for information and loads of inspiration about what's possible when we make that choice that we want to reinvent ourselves, when we want something new and different, and especially in midlife and beyond. We've got society telling us a lot of stories about what we can and can't do. And the reality is we can do anything when we decide it's true. And as women, we are so powerful in reimagining our lives in ways that serve us, inspire us, allow us to be our best selves. And that's what the Reinvention Rebels podcast is all about. It's stories of brave and unapologetic women who have tapped into that reinvention mindset, who recognize that they can steer their own ship in ways that work for them. And by sharing these stories of women that have reinvented themselves in ingenious, remarkable, often extraordinary ways, it gives us all hope and inspiration. There are many things these amazing women do that I will never do. Like my friend Jen, who on last week's episode talked about how she tracked for 3.5 years. Okay, that sounds crazy, but 3.5 years from Bangkok to Barcelona. Now, you know I'm never going to do that. It's enough for me to go on a hike for like an hour. So I was so inspired by that. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to reinvent myself in that way, but it reminds me about what's possible in my own life, in my own way. And that's what this podcast is all about. So I am so glad that you're here with me. By the way, if you didn't have a chance to listen to that episode, I've linked to it in the show notes because it's so good. She has so much wisdom, the courage that she showed to go on this trek, and the joy that's come out of the experiences she's had over many reinventions. Oh my gosh, it's such a great story, and you really need to take a listen to it. I really encourage you to do so. You can't help but get inspired by her story. Before we go on and get into today's content, I do want to talk about the power of community, because I think community is so important to reinventing ourselves and feeling like we're not alone. And there's so many different ways we can create community. So we have community on this podcast. We have the community of amazing men and women that are listening. We have the community of Reinvention Rebels that have graced us with their presence and shared their stories. That's community. And I'm thinking about community too, because I've been involved in many other communities that help bolster me. And just in this week, I've had two great examples about how community helps us move forward. So first, as I've been talking about for a few weeks, I've been involved in the Midlife Mojo Virtual Summit. So it started on the 18th. It's wrapping up on the 22nd. And it's been this amazing opportunity to connect with so many really cool, interesting women in midlife that, just like me and you, are trying to figure it out. And it's not like we've got some instant solution. A lot of it is fits and starts and feeling into what works and what doesn't, and course correcting, sometimes failing, getting back on track. But I loved being able to really be in conversation in our Facebook group with so many different women. I love doing this Instagram Live with Christina Smith, who is the organizer of this awesome summit. It's just an opportunity to get support and encouragement, and we all need that. I've also created this community more physically, and I had a chance on Tuesday to do my very first live Reinvention Rebels podcast episode, which I'm going to share with you at some point in the future. But it was at the International Festival of Arts and Ideas. It's a 2-week festival that takes place in New Haven, Connecticut, where I live. And it was such an amazing opportunity. And you'll also get to meet down the line these two women who have been on my radar for the longest time, Lisa Franco and Ellen Pankey, that I had the chance to interview live. And oh my gosh, it was awesome. So I just loved the opportunity to be in conversation with them and talk about their journey. So the idea of coming together physically, in addition to, of course, virtually, to me is a powerful statement. There are many different ways that we can create community and use that to fuel us as we navigate midlife and beyond, as we go on this reinvention journey. And that brings me to the main topic for today's episode, which is interesting because throughout season 5, and we're getting close to wrapping up season 5, we had this theme of do it scared and do it anyway. That we have to take those first steps. We have to course correct when we go off the rails. I also talked a lot about failure, my own personal failures, and how that helped fuel my reinvention journey in often unexpected ways. But all my guests have touched on this idea of getting started, of doing it scared, of feeling into it even when it feels uncomfortable, of finding courage within. That's what Jen talked about last week. Even when she was on the trek and she ran into challenges, how she leaned into herself and often did it scared, did it with uncertainty, and was able to move forward. So it's such a common thread that we can weave into this idea of reinvention. And when I think of reinventing myself and seeing other women reinvent themselves, one of the things that holds so true for me is this idea of awakening to ourself. That reinvention isn't a simple destination that I'm racing to get to, although I have done that in the past, and I can be like, I just want to get it done person. But I think that when we are open to reinventing ourselves and we're open to possibilities and we're open to the idea that it's not necessarily a straight line, that it doesn't have to be done in a certain time frame, that I might zig and zag and detour to get to my final destination, that so much of the learning is in the journey. That final destination is important because we have a dream or a goal and we want to move toward that. So yes, that's very important. But just as important to me is that journey of getting there. And the idea that it's sometimes one step forward, 2 steps back, but when we are willing to persevere and be persistent, we can get there. And it brings up 3 things for me that are important to this idea of awakening on our reinvention journey. Number 1 is listening. I've talked many times before about this idea of deep listening, getting quiet, listening to that voice in our head, being more still, we can make our journey easier. And I'm not saying it's easy, but easier. We can navigate with more ease when we are willing to get more quiet and still, when we are listening deeply to ourselves, cutting out a lot of the noise that's coming from other people, because honestly, that's not that important. It's about what we hear inside, what's bubbling up for us. This idea that we already have all the answers, and listening deeply. And it's a practice. It's not like it happens overnight. I had to really work on being quiet because I'm an active, move around, get things done person. So it's not my natural tendency to be more grounded. It is easy for me to run all around. So getting more quiet, getting still, listening, that's number one. That helps us in our personal awakening that evolves over time. Number two, this idea of letting go of how we think it needs to be and unfold. And last week, Jen talked about this idea of letting go, which is not easy because I'm a control freak. I want things to come out a certain way, my way. And there's something about reinventing ourselves to get the best outcome, to be on this journey and not necessarily know where it's leading. We have a direction, but it might not end up being that way. It involves the ability of letting go, of not being so tied to the outcome, of appreciating that sometimes we do need those detours to ultimately steer us in a better direction, as I've learned many times over in my experiences of reinventing myself, that it was when I let go and took my foot off the gas pedal, when I trusted things were working out, that it did. It is that notion of, I'm listening, I'm doing deep listening. I might get this idea that sparks something. I think that might lead to something, but maybe it doesn't. So if I'm open and I'm willing to let go and lean into what might be possible, the journey is so much more fun. It's so much more exciting. Yes, I know it's uncertain. I get that. And it's often scary. The uncertainty can feel scary. Yep, I have been there so many times. But I also feel like I get the best outcome when I let go. Even when I birthed Reinvention Rebels, when I heard that tiny voice when I was meditating, Reinvention Rebels, I didn't know what it was. I just let go into that and trusted it would present itself. And ultimately, I followed the clues and got clear it was a podcast, but that took some time. So letting go. So number two is letting go. First, deep listening. Two, letting go. 2 steps on that journey of personal awakening. And then finally, being patient. I'm so not a patient person. Just like I have a hard time letting go, I also have a hard time being patient because, I want things when I want things. But of course, that's not how it works. And so much of reinventing ourselves and being on this journey is patience, is seeing how things unfold. Not necessarily running to the first thing that presents itself that looks like it might be like the opportunity, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but also the willingness to step back and being patient, trusting that if that first thing doesn't pan out the way we want it to, even if we jump at it and rush toward it, that's okay. Being patient is helping to set the tone for creating whatever that is we're creating and for those steps we need to take on our reinvention journey. I was patient with myself when I started the podcast because I didn't know what I was doing. I was patient with myself when I decided that I was going to learn more about how to do it properly, right? Not just saying, I'm just going to start this, but actually getting some training. So I was patient with myself when I didn't immediately figure it out, and it took a lot of digging, right? Doing something new takes digging and excavating and kind of figuring out the best path to make it happen. And I was willing to do that. And that patience has paid off. That patience of being gentle with ourselves as we figure it out, knowing we don't have all the answers right away. It is unfolding, but that patience is so key also to this idea of awakening to ourselves, offering ourselves grace as we figure it out, seeing new things we didn't see before because we were patient. Or maybe we rush into things, learned that wasn't really the way, and then it gave us wisdom to be more patient. So I'm saying all these things, these 3 things, the deep listening, the letting go, the being patient, as guides, simple guides when we're thinking about reinventing ourselves, when we recognize that it isn't this quick thing, because we'll reinvent ourselves many times. I'm sure you already have, and I'm sure you will again, as I continue to do. So when we can get the perspective that we're on a long-term journey, not just a quick get to our destination, that maybe it's a multi-stop flight, not just a nonstop, that we can feel more confident, we can have more courage when we have that greater perspective that reinvention is a journey, and that as we go through, we're continuing to awaken to this deep wisdom that's within, and that all of us have this available to us. But again, it's a practice. It can take some time. So what can you do to tap into deep listening, letting go, and being patient? What have you done in the past? And what's one thing you could do in the next week or two to dip your toe into this idea of I am awakening to myself on my reinvention journey? I would love for you to noodle on that and give me a shout out. Let me know what you think. We are all evolving on our own time, in our own way. You are just like all of us on a reinvention journey, doing it on your terms. And I hope that if you lean into listening, letting go, and being patient with yourself, it will ease your reinvention journey. It will make it more joyful, and it will make it more exciting, because there are endless possibilities for what we can do and be. I'll be back again soon with a new episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you love this episode, please do me a quick favor. Leave me a rating on Apple Podcast, telling me what you loved about it, because there's so many people, especially women, seeking encouragement, inspiration, and hope. And when you rate the podcast, it makes it easier for other people to find us. And I want as many amazing women as possible to find the Reinvention Rebels podcast and see what could be possible for them as they dip their toe into reinvention. Until next time, remember, keep shining your light. The world needs you and all that you have to offer. Hey, Rebel. If this episode inspired you to think about what's possible in your life, I'll share a little secret. Any of us can reinvent ourselves no matter where we are in our lives, any age, any stage. We just have to decide to get started. Here's a super simple way for you to get going with your reinvention dreams. Download my audio, 5 questions to spark your curiosity and inspire your reinvention journey. I share 5 key questions that will spur your thinking, help you uncover your dreams, and motivate you to take action. Because if not now, when? Details in the show notes. Let's get inspired together.